Hey y'all, so I've been learning Portuguese since 2020, early 2020. And yes, I know logically speaking, that means that I've been learning Portuguese for about 2 years now. But aside from, COVID messing everything up, me being in school and just dipping my toes in a couple other languages, it's been more or less a year since I fully and seriously transitioned to seriously learning Portuguese. So I wanted to make a video to show my experience and my progress and just to look back in a year or two and see how far I've come. And hopefully you guys can take some sort of value from this. So obviously I got to start with why I decided to learn Portuguese, right? Okay, so why did I want to learn the language, right? Why Portuguese out of every other language? Well, one, the country is beautiful, the people are beautiful, the culture is beautiful, the music is beautiful, everything in Brazil, in my opinion, is beautiful. Man, even the flag is beautiful. But in all seriousness, one of the main reasons I wanted to learn Portuguese was because I have Brazilian roots because of my mom. My great granddad was Brazilian and my grandma lived in Brazil. My parents themselves, both of my parents lived in Brazil for some time in Rio. The second biggest reason is because my home country, especially where I live, has a big Brazilian influence. I'm from Santa Cruz, Bolivia. It is very close to Brazil. There are a lot of correlations between the cultures. It's not rare at all to see many Bolivians speaking Portuguese, and it's very, very common to see a lot of Brazilians in Bolivia. Which leads me to my next point. The third reason why I want to learn Portuguese is because everyone in my family basically speaks Portuguese. Now, they don't speak it fluently, but they know Portuguese regardless. It's very common to see Bolivians knowing some form of Portuguese. And honestly, the last reason is because I would love to visit Brazil, whether that's in Rio, whether that's in Sao Paulo, whether that's in Natal, and just meet up with people that I've met throughout my life, throughout my time, and just get to know, the beautiful scenery, the beautiful culture of Brazil. Okay, so my game plan came in 3 big ways. And the first one is honestly full immersion, and by that I mean make this your life. Well, a couple of things that I did was I changed my phone language to Portuguese. I watched as many Brazilian TV shows and as many movies as I could. Music and podcasts were probably one of the biggest things that helped me see the culture differently, see how people spoke, the mannerisms, the etiquette, and reading Brazilian news. The second is going to be the 80-20 rule, and I have to give credit to my boy Nathaniel Drew. The 80-20 rule is basically the Pareto principle, meaning 80% of the consequences are caused by 20% of the cause. I think that's how I said it. 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. There you go. 80% of the language can honestly be spoken with 20% of the most common words. Honestly, only the top 1,000 words is all you're really going to need to converse properly with somebody, to actually understand what they're saying and to just make a conversation out of. Now, once you get into more scholastic and, more research driven and high level reading and speaking in a university level, that's where things change, and that's where the other 20% comes in. And the third one is going to be ditching conventional school methods. I have to give credit to Ikenna for this. Grammar is probably going to be the last thing I'm learning, and pronunciation is going to be the single-handedly most important thing that I'm going to be learning. I think how schools teach language nowadays isn't very efficient, just because grammar and writing and reading isn't what you're really going to be doing majority of the time. Chances are you don't do it within your native tongue. So this is why I think grammar should probably be one of the last things you should worry about. Now, another thing I'd like to say is I think you should try and talk as much as possible. Hear how you say things, talk as much as you can, because nothing beats you just talking. Being exposed to people who speak the language, exposed to how people perceive what you say, how you perceive what they say. Okay, so speaking of not using conventional methods to learning a language, how did I learn this language? What did I use? What resources did I use for this? So let's go over that. In total, I used 5 apps. The first one one is Duolingo. Duolingo is a beginner, very basic, very beginner language learning app that shows you how some of the words are said, how to spell them out. But I think you should not use this as your only method of learning a language, and I think if anything it should be probably only in the beginner level and then scrap. Now Pimsleur, it's a language learning app that has a library full of different languages that you can learn, but what I like about this one so much is that it forces you to speak it, and by that I mean it forces you to actually say the word, pronunciate it correctly. It shows you how to perceive it, how you're going to hear it, and it actually goes by slowly and honestly does a really good job of teaching you how to enunciate a lot of these words. The third is going to be iTalk. Now iTalk is probably by far one of my favorite apps, and I think it's probably one of the most effective apps, but unfortunately it's probably going to be one of the most expensive ones to use. Now italki is a tutoring program that you pay hourly, whether it is for a program, as in you can get multiple sessions with said teacher, whoever it is, or just go by hour basis or by 30-minute increments. It all depends on you, but this does cost money because you are charged hourly, but it is by far one of the most effective ways to learn the language. And I say this because when you actually start to pay for something, I don't know why, but the psychology just hits more effectively, because at this point you know, oh, now I really got to get to it. All right, I paid for this, now let's get into it. And since you're speaking with somebody, it's a completely different level. I remember my first time talking with my first instructor, shout out to Jessica. When I spoke with her, it was immediate. It wasn't like a hi, how are you, my name is Jessica, no, she just won in, and I loved it.
Pause.
It put me on the spot, and it was so intimidating, and I was so scared, but I love the fact that boom, you are forced to talk, and you have to talk, all right, because now you're conversing with somebody. So I think it's probably one of the most effective, just because you actually have to talk. Number 4 is going to be Drops. Now Drops isn't necessarily a course that I'm recommending or a software that I think you should get. It's more so a supplement. Drops is basically kind of like Duolingo, but instead it in my opinion, has more of it varies more with the diction and the words that it uses. So I think it's definitely very supplemental. And the last one is going to be Hello Talk. Hello Talk is basically a language exchange app where you can text people all around the world with the language you want, and it's basically just chatting or text messaging people from around the world and just language learning with them, or language exchange languages with them. The other biggest category is going to be YouTube. YouTube is honestly one of the best methods of giving you free resources to learn from. I basically followed 2 different subcategories. I followed linguistic YouTubers and Portuguese YouTube channels. So for linguistic YouTubers, I like to follow people like Ikenna, Nathaniel Drew, Lausha, rest in peace Lausha. The reason I follow them is just because they gave me a ton of confidence just to go forward and talk to people and just put myself out there. I think they do a very great job of just going out there and showing that as someone who is language learning, you don't need to know everything. You don't need to be fluent to go out and speak with people. And surprisingly enough, people are very nice and more than willing to just go out and talk to you. So I think that is awesome. For Portuguese YouTube channels, I followed people such as Felipe Neto, Small Advantages, Porta de Fundo. I hope I said that right. I feel like I always say that wrong. I don't know why. And the reason I follow them and watch their content is mainly because it just shows a lot of the Brazilian culture and how things are said and how things are done. Different references that I may not know. Now, by far, probably one of the most frequently used methods that I use for learning the language is going to be music. Now, by far, I will be the first to say that Brazilian music is probably one of the most diverse, one of the most beautiful genres that I have ever heard. You have bossa nova, you have samba, you have Brazilian funk, and you have axé. Now for bossa nova, I really like listening to people like João Gilberto from making the song Girl from Ipanema. Didn't even know he made one with Frank Sinatra. And I also use samba. Probably one of my favorite songs is Canta Canta Minha Gente by Martinho da Villa. I hope I said that right. I think it's Martinho. And for Brazilian funk, I really got into it with Kevinho, with Olha Explodão. And for axé, definitely one of my favorite songs is probably gonna have to be Onda Onda by Axé Bahia. Amazing culture, amazing songs that I think probably one of the most diverse cultures that I've seen within Latin America. And fourth is going to have to be movies and TV shows. Now, a good resource that many people have that I think you should use is Netflix. Now, Netflix has a bunch, and I mean a bunch of different categories, different languages, different countries that you can use, and chances are they will have series for it. Chances are if you put whatever country, if you put, let's say, Polish TV shows, Polish movies, even just put Poland, chances are they will have something, which is one of the things I did. All I put was Brazilian TV shows, Brazilian movies, and I kid you not, there are so many movies, so many so many TV shows in there. The big three that I could recommend to you right now is going to be 3%. The other one is probably my favorite, called Coisa Mais Lindas. Now, if you really want to get into it and just have everything in Portuguese, I think one of the best resources would probably have to be Global Play. It has probably one of the biggest selections for Portuguese and Brazilian TV shows. One of my favorites in there is Avenida Brasil, probably one of my favorite TV shows that I grew up watching. Lastly, it's going to be podcasts. Now, for me, I don't really listen to Portuguese podcasts that often, and if I do, it's going to be Nerdcast or Nerdcast. I think they do a really great job of just talking about whatever. The last time I heard them, they were talking about Elon Musk buying Twitter. So I think you can, if you're the type that really likes to listen to podcasts and soak in, Nerdcast is definitely a really good podcast to use. Okay. I mean, I knew I was gonna have to talk about this sooner or later. So let's talk about it. The struggles. Oh, wow. Where do I start? It's conflict with Spanish. For those who don't know, Portuguese is very similar to Spanish. It isn't 100% identical, and there are a lot of things that it differs from completely. But the reason I was able to understand Portuguese and learn it as, or at least I'd like to think, is because of its similarities with Spanish. Now, that is a pro. Many of the words sound and spell alike, so that's what helped me, but it was also probably one of the biggest cons that kind of set me back on a couple of things. Like, for example, if I want to say I can speak Spanish, right? In Spanish you say yo puedo hablar español. Now in Portuguese it says eu posso falar em português or español. You can see where the similarities are alike, and that was what helped me so much. But there's a lot of words that are just completely different that I just did not know. Stuff like that is where I really get tripped up, because I think one word is going to be just like the other because of their similarities within the languages, and sometimes they are just completely different, and I sometimes have to teach myself to not connect or link some of those words together. And I know that's kind of a bad habit to have, and it's still one of the ones that I'm still working on. So that's probably one of my biggest struggles. The second one is going to be pronunciation. Now, Portuguese is a very phonic language. The biggest challenge was using the aun. For example, you have promoción in Spanish, which means promotion. Now in Portuguese it said promoção. It's one of the few couple of enunciation and pronunciation challenges that I had, just because a lot of words may not sound like they have to say it. It's kind of hard to explain, but having that little aun there makes a huge difference. And the third one is definitely going to be accents. Now, I was very surprised to figure out or find out that Brazil has a bunch of accents. And I thought the United States had a bunch of accents. Like, I know we have our Boston, New York, we have our Southern, we have the California, Cajun accent. I mean, we have a bunch, but man, does Brazil have a bunch more. Now, the two biggest accents that you'll really know or associate, you know, because of TV, celebrities, politicians, news, are going to be your carioca, which is your residents from Rio. Now, that's usually what you'll hear mainly in music, TV. YouTubers like Felipe Neto are from Rio. And you also have Sao Paulo, and also known as cariocas. What?
Oh, fuck.
Paulistas, and they're more of a neutral based accent. I know that many politicians, many newscasts will use this sort of accent because it's just very neutral, so it's very easy to understand. So honestly, I will say that if you really want to get into it and you really want to emphasize on accents, I think listening to a lot of news channels, politicians, and just anything regarding business will be very easy to understand. In my opinion, I think they're very neutral. The accent isn't heavy as, say, a carioca. Now, carioca has thick accent, and this is where you definitely hear you know, and I still struggle to sometimes understand cariocas. I know that cariocas speak a little faster, and also there's a lot more slang. I mean, there's nothing wrong with either or. I think both are beautiful, but those are probably two of the biggest accents that you're probably gonna have to be in contact with, I guess. So, all right, you guys, I'm not gonna tell you that I'm fluent or that I'm even close to it. To be honest, I still get nervous when I still have to use it from time to time. And honestly, sometimes I mess up horribly. But I will tell you that since learning Portuguese, I've come to understand and appreciate the culture just so much more, because there is nothing more rewarding than seeing your work paid off when you talk to a native speaker and they actually understand what you say. Aside from the small surge of pride you get when you see their face change because you're talking to them in their native tongue, you can feel the conversation become a little more personal, a lot more personable actually, and it takes a completely different vibe. So like I said, y'all, if you can fully immerse yourself into the language, just learn the common words, and honestly talk as much as possible. Just give yourself some time, and I can assure you it will be one of the most rewarding experiences you've ever had. I don't know, I just wanted to give my small update to my ongoing journey in learning Portuguese. Still not finished. I'm still learning. I still think I'm a beginner, and hopefully you can get some value out of this. Hopefully you can learn a couple of things from here and get something valuable out of this. Anyways, excuse me while I go watch a rerun of Avenida Brasil, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. Ciao, ciao.